Hello, all you courageous, beautiful family, Courageous Journeys family. Thank you for being here. I'm going to give this a moment just to kind of settle in to this space. So I wanted to do this. I don't know that I've done a gratitude practice video before. So I thought that I would come in today and do a video to kind of walk you through a practice that you can use in your life daily or whenever the mood strikes you. I truly do believe that gratitude, practicing gratitude on a regular basis, no matter how you're feeling before you go into it, not only changes or has the potential to change how you feel in that moment, but when practiced pretty regularly, truly does help you heal. Whatever the wounding, whatever the emotional wounding is, wherever it comes from, a regular gratitude practice, really connecting to the feeling of gratitude in your being, can change everything. So I thought that I would do this, walk you through this practice and share a little bit about why we need to practice gratitude. So first, I want to fully acknowledge, and if you've followed me for a while, you know that I do acknowledge this in my Gratitude Monday posts. But when you are struggling emotionally, for whatever reason, it can be really challenging to find something to truly feel grateful for, because there's so much that feels so hard or so overwhelming. And when somebody then tells you to practice gratitude or find something that you're grateful for, it can feel incredibly dismissive or minimizing, which is a form of being dismissive, I suppose. And so that can make it even more challenging. We also don't want to kind of go to the other end of the spectrum, which is what a lot of people do, and deny the struggle and just try to find something to feel grateful for. And that's what a lot of people do. People that have a lot of childhood or emotional wounding, as well as people in kind of the spiritual and religious communities, and those are not necessarily the same thing. And even a lot of self-help work or information also is somewhat similar, can be somewhat similar. So that might look like, I don't know, you get in a car accident and you're pretty much okay, but maybe your car is totaled, and maybe you don't have the money to fix it, or you need to take time off of work, and that's going to be a challenge. So what you don't want to do is deny or ignore or push aside the reality of the challenge or the struggle that it's creating in your life, or the soreness in your body or whatever. You don't want to deny that and just focus on, oh, I'm so grateful I'm alive. Yes, it's important to be able to be grateful to be alive, or that maybe nobody was seriously hurt, or that you have insurance that will fix your car. Those are important. And I will talk about something similar to that in a moment, but it's also incredibly important for your emotional well-being that you also do not deny the reality of what's going on, the struggle that you're feeling. So what that could look like is, let yourself feel whatever you feel about the fact that your car is totaled, the fact that you're feeling sore, the fact that you have to miss work, the fact that you're fearful of what this is going to mean for your financial circumstances. Honor that. You can say, I'm scared. You can say, oh, this pain is really uncomfortable, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to go to work, or I'm not sure how I'm going to get all these things done, or chase after my kid, or whatever. Being able to acknowledge that, being able to acknowledge that that's how you're feeling, that is not dwelling. That is not focusing on all the bad. It's not any of that so-called like negative stuff or unhealthy stuff. It's acknowledging and honoring the reality of where you're at and how you're feeling. And when you can do that, and then sit down, and while acknowledging that, so you're not denying any of that, then also being able to say, I am so grateful that I have insurance that will pay to have my car fixed. I'm so grateful that nobody was seriously injured. I'm so grateful that I have paid time off so that I can take a couple of days. When you can connect to gratitude in a situation like that, while also honoring and acknowledging and validating the reality or the challenge of what the situation or experience might create, then you are fully honoring yourself while also acknowledging what you might be able to feel some gratitude around. Now, it doesn't have to happen at the same time in order for it to be effective. So being able to acknowledge the struggle is important. If you are struggling with anxiety or depression or relationship issues, things aren't going well, you're struggling at your job in some way, it doesn't mean, okay, I'm not going to think about that because at least I have a job. I'm not going to think about that because my relationship isn't always bad, or there's a lot of good that comes from my relationship. That isn't really the most overall emotionally healthy thing to do. And I say overall emotionally healthy because, of course, in moments, maybe that's important. But if that's your general practice, that's probably not very helpful. We need to be able to acknowledge, honor, validate the reality of how we're feeling, no matter what that feeling is, no matter what other people would think about it, even no matter how hard it might feel to acknowledge the truth of how you're feeling. But part of the benefit of a gratitude practice is that we can do all of that and then move, or not necessarily move, let me rephrase that. We can acknowledge and honor all of that and create the space to connect with the gratitude that can also exist in those moments. So some of you have probably heard me talk about this, so I'll give an example from my own gratitude experience when I first started keeping a gratitude journal. I had been in a car accident where, fortunately, my children were not injured. It was a hit and run. Somebody else hit me and took off. I had a neck and shoulder injury that it initially didn't particularly feel all that bad until after I got home, and then the pain started pretty significantly. But I was able to function for the most part. My car, on the other hand, which was a new car, I think I'd only had it 5 months and it was a brand new car. And at that time, it was a car that I was struggling with believing I deserved. It was just a American-made, not luxury car. but still an expensive car. It was an SUV. Most expensive vehicle I had ever owned, for sure. But my car was pretty messed up. It had to be towed from the scene. And I was in a neck brace for a while, had a lot of shoulder pain. But so I started the gratitude practice maybe, I don't know, a few months, 6 months, maybe after the car accident. And also my dog died. I think right after the car accident. Might have been right before the car accident. Anyway, right in that same time period. I think it was after the car accident. And then we also moved. We bought a new home and moved into a house that I never believed I would have been able to live in. Just an average middle income home, but I had never lived in a home like that before. So anyway, I was still struggling a lot. I had a lot of headaches, mostly. But there were days that I didn't have headaches, or at least not as bad. And I had done some healing around my abuse, but still had some healing to do. Still not believing I was deserving of the nicer car. In fact, the accident was proof that I didn't deserve to have a nice car. And if you've heard me talk about that, you'll kind of understand what I mean by how we take things as proof of what we already believe. So I had seen, I don't know how to say her last name, Sarah somebody or other, on Oprah, who created a book, and I don't remember what the book was, but she also created a gratitude journal. And so every night I wrote 5 things that I was grateful for. And it was a struggle. There were a lot of days that it was quite a struggle. But one of the things that she said that was incredibly helpful was, it can be the same things over and over again. And I think that saved my gratitude journey, because for nights on end, sometimes probably for weeks on end, it was the same things. And at that time, I wasn't great at honoring exactly how I was feeling. But the more I practiced, the easier it became to honor the reality of how I felt. So on days that, like if I hadn't had a really horrible headache from the neck injury, I would not journal. I would not be grateful for having a headache, but I would try to find something else that I could be grateful for. But on the next day, if my headache was not as bad, because sometimes it would linger, but it would get a little bit better. So the next day I would notice that my headache wasn't quite as bad. And remembering what it felt like, I was able to truly feel a sense of gratitude that even though I had a headache, which I would acknowledge, I was grateful that it wasn't so bad, while still acknowledging that I did still have a headache. And that's a piece of making sure that you're not denying or minimizing the reality of what you're going through, but still being able to connect with something that you truly feel in your mind, in your body. Because I wasn't happy that I still had a headache. I still felt fearful about, was I ever going to get to a point when I didn't have headaches? But I was able to truly feel a connection to being grateful that I didn't go throughout my entire day feeling that level of pain. And so being able to acknowledge whatever struggle is there and also being able to find gratitude. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to find gratitude around the thing that we're struggling with. There were days that I didn't say anything at all in my gratitude journal about how I physically felt. On those days, maybe I would acknowledge feeling gratitude about overall being healthy, physically healthy, being grateful for my children being healthy, or my husband being healthy. On those days that I repeated the same things over and over again, health, and even if I wasn't feeling particularly good, so I wouldn't acknowledge or feel gratitude, wasn't able to connect to my own health, I would feel grateful for my children's health would be one thing. Some days I might have even separated them out. I had 2 children. So some days if I was really struggling to find something to be grateful for, I might say I'm grateful for his health, and I'm grateful for his health, and I'm grateful for my husband's health. So that was 3 right there. But gratitude for the health of people that I loved, because that was something that I could truly feel grateful for. One of the other things that I connected to a lot during that time, so my car took a good amount of time to be repaired because of the insurance stuff, because it was a hit and run, and the guy took off. The police did catch him, but his insurance wasn't going to pay. My insurance wanted the other person to pay for it, and so it took a long time for my car to get fixed. My new car that I couldn't drive, but having insurance ultimately that would repair my car was something that I connected to. One of the things that, aside from my car having so much damage, one of the things that I found really helpful to help me really connect to a sense of appreciation was having a dependable car. So for me, I grew up in poverty, below the level of poverty. There were times that we had a car, but it wasn't particularly dependable. There were times that we didn't have a car and had to rely on other people or public transportation. And as a kid, taking public transportation by myself really felt very unsafe. And so I did not like it. I would try to walk if I could. I would prefer to do that over taking public transportation. And then even as, well, technically not even a young adult, but after having my first child, moving away, we had a car, but if it rained, it was not at all dependable. It wouldn't start a lot of times. And that feeling of going to start your car and it not starting, like I can actually still remember what that feels like. It's not like a traumatic response. It's not like a traumatic memory kind of thing, but that fear that comes up when you don't have money, when you don't have transportation, when you need to get somewhere and you're not sure how you're going to get there. Like that's a pretty significant fear and even hopelessness that can come up. And so I remember what that feels like. And even though I have a very dependable car, and I've been very fortunate that having a dependable car that didn't have a warranty or something like that, hasn't been something that's been an issue for me for some time now. But even in the car I have now, it's a keyless entry and keyless start. And there was a time that, well, actually it had nothing to do with the keyless thing. I forgot to put my car in park when I turned it off, and somehow didn't notice that. But I went out to start my car it was in a parking lot. I went out to start my car and it didn't start. And in that moment, I was frustrated, but I also had this re-experiencing of that feeling in my body of almost like panic. Now, obviously, it's a very different situation than it was when I was younger and didn't have the money to fix it or a warranty to go to have my car fixed. But in that moment, it was like this kind of thing. And everything was fine. And the guy came to tow it in, and it wasn't in park. But the reality is that in that moment, it panicked me because I remember what that felt like. And so in my gratitude journal, even though I didn't have my car, knowing that it was going to be fixed and knowing what it feels like to not have to worry about that, realizing that in my day-to-day life, the fear of whether my car was going to start wasn't there anymore. And connecting to with how grateful that felt, that reality, because that was a change in my everyday life, that I no longer had to fear in the morning when I went out to start my car, whether it was going to start, or when I read the forecast or saw the forecast and knew it was going to be raining, already fearing that my car would not start the next day. The ease that that brought to my life, even with some of the other stuff that was going on, the sense of ease that that created, because I didn't even have to think about it, because it wasn't something that had to cross my mind anymore. That sense of appreciation made a huge difference for me. So when I would sit down to write what I was grateful for that day, when I was having some difficulty coming up with what happened in that day that I could be grateful for, that was something that I could always fall back on because it made a significant difference. And so maybe that isn't your experience, maybe that isn't your story, but there is something that maybe it's not all the time, maybe it's for a day at a time, maybe it's for a week at a time, that maybe you don't even pay attention to anymore. Maybe it's something that, as humans do, you've never actually had to think about or worry about. But if you really think about it, it's something that could bring you a felt sense of gratitude and appreciation. So, like health, for example, if you've always been relatively healthy and the people around you have been relatively healthy, then you probably don't think too much about your health. And so really thinking about your health or your ability, your physical abilities, the kinds of things that most of us who have pretty typical general physical ability, take completely for granted because it's not something we've been challenged by. And that doesn't make us bad people. It's just, for the reality is that for most humans, unless you've had to think about it, either for yourself or because somebody you care about has been challenged by it, we tend to not think that much about it. So letting yourself kind of think about that, like having, like literally having the safety of having a place to live where you can feel pretty safe in your home. And maybe that's something you've always had, and I hope that it is. But for a lot of people, maybe the neighborhood that you live in, for whatever reason, doesn't feel particularly safe. Or maybe the locks on your doors are not as sturdy. Maybe your home needs a lot of repair, whether it's a rental or a home that you own. And so if there's a bad storm, you worry about having a roof leak. If you've never had to worry about that, or if you don't have to worry about it now, but you did, being able to really think about that you don't have to think about other people that do have to worry about that, but just connecting to that within yourself, feeling into the ease that that has brought you in your life, no matter what other struggle is there. And maybe there's a ton of other struggle, but being able to look at that one thing, or if you own your home or it's a rental, knowing that if there's something that goes wrong, you have insurance to fix it or a landlord to fix it. Being able to really sit and think about that and think, okay, I feel pretty safe in my home. I feel pretty safe that if there's a horrible storm that comes through, I'm probably pretty safe in here, and I feel pretty confident that I'm not going to have a major roof leak. And if I do, it can be fixed because I have insurance. So being able to really take a moment and think about that. If, certainly if you're healthy or if you are able-bodied, being able to really think about what that affords you in your life. Being able to sit up in bed in the morning and put your feet on the floor and easily walk into the bathroom. Being able to have the dexterity to hold a toothbrush and brush your teeth. One of the things I am grateful for, I've used I guess it's called an electric toothbrush. I don't even know now at this point. I've used an electric toothbrush for years, and when the battery dies, or I think I'm on my fourth one. Fortunately, they last a while. But like when the battery dies because I haven't charged it, like there's a huge difference in using it manually or using it electric. And I still use the motions, but there's a huge difference. And being grateful for the dexterity to be able to brush your teeth, to hold a toothbrush and brush your teeth. I'm grateful for my electric toothbrush. The gratitude, and this may sound kind of strange, but truthfully, the ability to sit easily and get up to go to the bathroom. The ability to so easily get into the shower or bathtub and do all the things that you need to do. The ability to feed yourself, to make your food. And there are so many people who don't have that, or where it is a challenge, either through illness and they don't have the strength or the physical ability. One of the things that I'm going for morning walks a lot now that the weather has cooled off here. And I have been very fortunate in that I have been pretty healthy throughout my life. Of course, I get illnesses. I've had different circumstances that have not been fun to have to deal with, but overall, I have been pretty healthy. Given my family history, very, very fortunate that I don't seem to be following, at least at this age, in the same footsteps, because my mother died at 49 from a long chronic illness. My father died at 51 from a heart attack. He had had heart disease and had had a stroke. So I have officially lived longer than my mother, about the same age as my father when he died. So being able to really think about that And maybe your health is not good. Maybe it is an incredible challenge for you. Maybe you do struggle with different sorts of limited abilities, physical, and even emotional or mental health wise. And it's important to acknowledge and honor and validate that reality. It's important to be able to have love and compassion for the part of you that is challenged. It's so incredibly important to be able to do that. And it can also be really important to be able to acknowledge and honor what does work for you, what is healthy within you, what does work for you in your body and your ability to function in the world. So now for the practice part. So what I'd like you to do, so hopefully you're not driving watching this. What I'd like you to try to do is, taking in everything that you've heard, is take a moment, close your eyes, and just breathe. Don't change your breath. Don't do anything. Just settle in for a moment, closing your eyes and breathing. Notice, maybe the breath comes easily. Maybe the breath is a challenge. Maybe you're stuffy. Maybe breathing for any number of reasons can feel uneasy for you. So notice that. If it comes very natural, if you're able to breathe without having to give it much thought, that's something to be grateful for. Because I know that there are many people out there, whether it's because they're struggling with a cold or some other reason, chronic sinus issues, or an emotional experience that leaves them feeling uneasy to focus on their breath. So if it comes easy to you, that's something to be grateful for. And so in this moment, if breathing is pretty natural and easy for you, take a moment to acknowledge that. Feel grateful for the ease of the breath as it flows in and out. And if it is a challenge for you, that's okay. Acknowledge that. Still try to breathe, and if you have to breathe through your mouth, that's perfectly okay. But take this moment to honor that breathing can be a challenge at times, and that it's okay. It doesn't make you any less than. Acknowledge it and validate that sometimes, or maybe most of the time, breathing can be a challenge. Maybe today is a little worse. Maybe today is a little better. And if it is a little better, maybe that's something to be grateful for. And if in any way your breath can be something to be grateful for right now, with your eyes closed, just feeling the breath moving in and out, flowing down through your nose, down into your lungs, and exhaling completely. Feeling a sense of appreciation for the way that your body knows naturally to breathe. We often have to remind ourselves. We often breathe very shallowly. But our body knows, our lungs know to breathe. Our lungs clean the oxygen that we breathe. Be grateful for that. That's not something that everybody has within them. Their lungs, for different reasons, chronic medical conditions, different types of chronic medical conditions. That's not something that everybody has available to them. So really feeling a sense of ease around that. And then, keeping in mind everything that I've said, take a moment with your eyes closed and reflect on something. It could be something that we take for granted, like I've talked about, or it can be something really big and meaningful and significant. A relationship that has brought magic, wonder, enjoyment to your life, connection. It could be an experience that you will never forget. Maybe it was something that brought a ton of laughter, adventure, meaningful connection to yourself or others. But let yourself reflect on something that, when you think about it, you feel a remembrance of that in your body. Maybe you feel a sensation in your heart, in your chest. Maybe it brings a smile to your face. Maybe it brings a sense of warmth to your body. Maybe even a little tingling sensation if there was some like excitement or nervous anxiety and it turned out beautifully. Remember what that felt like in your body, how it felt in your heart to experience that. That is what it means to connect to that sense of appreciation. When we can go back and connect to the feeling that that experience felt like. Even if that experience is feeling grateful for something that you've taken for granted. When we can do that, like I said, when I think about feeling grateful for having a dependable car, I can remember what it felt like not to. And I feel in my body like this just sense of ease about that. So when we connect to that gratitude, we connect to the feeling in our body of what that ease, joy, connection, excitement, adventure, whatever it is, love, we connect back to that. And that reminds us, in that moment, it reminds us of what we have to be grateful for. It might even, depending on what we're reflecting on, it might even remind us that we are capable, that we're strong, that we're lovable, that we're enough, that we're worthy. And the more that we practice that, no matter what it is we're connecting to, the more we practice and connect to that feeling, the more we believe in our inherent worthiness. And for me, that is what a gratitude practice is. I mentioned being able to sit up and put your feet on the floor and get out of bed. If you've ever been really sick, I'm not even talking about some significant diagnosis, but just a flu or a stomach bug or something. You know how challenging it can be to even sit, how challenging it can be to just sit up. So when you think about being able to, just how much for granted we take that every single day, when you can connect back and remember how sick you might have felt and how just trying to sit up would make you feel kind of dizzy or make you feel like you were going to throw up or you didn't have the strength to be able to do it. When you remember what that felt like and then can say, I didn't even think about that this morning, I just got up. That's something to be grateful for. And when you connect to the difference in how that feels, that's what gratitude feels like. That's the type of gratitude that when we experience it, it changes. It literally changes our cells. It changes the way that our body is functioning in that moment. And the more we practice it, the more change that's created, the more sustained change is created. And that's why I have been doing Gratitude Monday for however long I've been doing it. I don't know. I think it's either been 6 years or maybe 8 years at this point. I always forget, but that's why I do this, because I personally know, because of the difference it has made in my own life. And I also know from science, there's science out there that backs it up, and just seeing the changes that it can create for people. So this is why I encourage you most Mondays to take a moment and reflect. And so I hope that kind of walking you through that a little bit has been helpful to give you something a little bit more concrete that you've experienced, hopefully, in your body in this gratitude practice. And this is something that really, there's very little that I promise ever when it comes to healing. I really do believe that I can say that if you are able to practice this regularly, while acknowledging, honoring, and validating any struggle that may be there. So, because that's an important piece, you have to be able to do that too. If you can do that, I really feel like I can promise that it will make a significant difference in how you feel emotionally and the significant impact it will have on your healing overall. But, and this is really, really important, you can't do the gratitude and deny the struggle. If you're doing that, it's not going to actually change anything at a core level. It won't. And that's why I think no matter what kind of self-help or healing practice you're doing, if you're denying, avoiding, minimizing this stuff over here, it actually isn't going to change anything on a permanent or at a permanent level, because you're still not dealing with this stuff over here. So both have to be incorporated. And whether it's big stuff or just, it could be a daily thing, like that day, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. That day you had plans to meet up with a friend, and Either you had to cancel or they had to cancel for some reason, very valid reason, whatever it might be. If you're kind of having a hard time with that, if you're feeling like you're really missing that person, if you're feeling really disappointed, if, I don't know, whatever. If you're feeling something strongly about that, if it's making you struggle in some way, it's important to be able to acknowledge that, acknowledge how you're feeling about it. Even if logically you know that it's not personal or whatever, you can say that, but still also acknowledge, I'm really disappointed about that. And then being able to look at what you are grateful for. You have to be able to do both. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and being open to possibly a different way of thinking about a gratitude practice. And also, thank you for being part of this community. So I'm just going to see if I can. Okay, so I think there's a comment that I can't see. I see that Jamie joined. Hi, Jamie. I don't know if you're still here. Yes, being grateful for my student loans, burdens and blessings, debt and devotion. This is, I think, a really interesting piece too. And I agree with how you've said it here. Even the ability to get student loans, the ability to go to school, I think is something also to be able to be grateful for, and feeling what, and this could be true for a car loan or anything else really. So being grateful, I think, for being able to have them, and also what having that has given to you. Especially if you're struggling with the the payment aspect of it, because it can be so easy to get caught up in that, and was it worth it, and all of that. So I think both of those pieces also can be really important. I take care of people who are unable to go to the bathroom without someone helping them. It's such a dignity issue. Yeah, that is such a challenging thing. My grandfather died, and I kind of was with him as he was nearing the end of his life, and over a period of time. And it did get to a point where he wasn't able to do certain things. Going to the bathroom wasn't one of them, but he wasn't able to very easily wash himself. And that is such a challenge, regardless of age. In fact, maybe for younger people, it might even be more of a challenge. But we take for granted so many things that, like I said, for many of us, we have no reason to necessarily think about, because it's not something we've been confronted with, not close up anyway. And when we, through work or through just caring about somebody, having somebody in our life who does face challenges, it definitely does give you a different perspective. And one thing that comes to mind is, and this isn't to try to get political, but one of the things that comes to mind is how different our religious or political views can be when we are faced with a situation, or somebody that we care about is faced with a situation. And you recognize that your beliefs about those things might shift a little bit, because you have a new perspective. And I think that just a human thing, that it is very natural to take for granted, and not in a negative light as a person or as a human being, but just naturally that we don't, it doesn't come into our awareness to be grateful for something that we've always had access to. I think that financially, the financial resources that we have available to us is another thing that a lot of people can take for granted very easily. And I think that being somebody who was born into and grew up in poverty, and even in my first marriage, my husband was in the military. We were young. I was 17, he was 18 when we were first married. It was, and then had 2 kids by the time I was 18, or at 18, I had 2 children. The reality is we were still in poverty. He was in the military. I was not working. Well, actually, I did start working part-time, but we were still in poverty. We were having to pawn things to buy diapers and formula. So going from that place to not having to worry about that is a huge, huge, huge change. And for a lot of people who start out in poverty, they live their entire lives in poverty. And so it's easy to take for granted. There are things now that, because I haven't been in that place for so long, that that I still can very easily take something for granted, like my dependable car. There are certainly days that go by that I don't think about that. And that's okay. I don't need to think about that every single day to be grateful for it still. But it's very easy to be grateful for the things that are available to us in our everyday life. Food, having fresh food, having electricity or plumbing. We've done some remodeling on our house, and there have been times that we didn't have, because the electricity had to be turned off because things were being worked on, where we went hours without electricity. The things we take for granted. Not having plumbing, not having water working, so not having the ability to have running water to wash your hands. Like, think about that. How many times do you wash your hands a day? And I work from home, so I'm home all the time. Like, you go to turn the water on to wash your hands and realize, I don't have any water. That's a huge thing. We actually had a leak just recently and ruined our new wood floors. So we had to turn the water off for quite some time, like a whole night and into the middle of the next day. That was interesting because we only had the water that we happened to have that was bottled already. The thing in the refrigerator didn't work. That was a challenge. Fortunately, we were able to have somebody come out and fix it, but we definitely take for granted the freedom, the ease that running water gives us. And it doesn't make us bad people for taking it for granted. We've become accustomed to taking stuff like that for granted. Being able to easily go to the gas station and put gas in your car, we take that for granted. I remember counting out change to get gas when I was going to say a teenager, but I think even after having kids, there might have been times I had to do that. Like literally not being able to afford gas. Or there are places, not so much in the US, not so much in many countries, where you might not have access to gas when there's like a hurricane coming and you run out of gas because everybody's filling up because they're worried about not having access. So there are a lot of things in our everyday life that we take for granted, and that doesn't make us bad people. I think it's important to recognize that, but I think it is something that we can take a moment or some moments to sit and really think about that. Think about how you go through your day on a regular basis. What are the things that help you move through the day, that help nourish you physically, nutritionally, the things that nourish you emotionally? What are those things that help you move throughout your day, make your day easier, make your day enjoyable, easeful? And those are some of the things that pretty much every day you can sit and be grateful for. So I would like to leave you with a challenge. I'm still going to go through any comments here, but I'd like to leave you with a challenge to really try for a week. Give it a week. I would encourage you to try it far beyond that, at least a month, but even just try for a week. Either start your day or end your day. And you can do it anytime, but starting your day or ending your day is really a great time to do it. I found ending my day being a really great way to help integrate a little bit more. Can also be helpful if you tend to be restless when you sleep or have a lot of bad dreams. Ending your day, doing a gratitude journal can be really helpful. But again, you have to be able to connect to it. You have to be able to honor all of that. Although starting your day from a place of gratitude, especially if you're not a morning person, can be really beautiful too. So maybe you start and end your day. I actually have a new planner that I'm using, and it's I'm doing it in the morning, and it starts with morning gratitude. And I like that. It's not something I've typically practiced a whole lot, but I like starting my day with gratitude, and then I also end my day with gratitude. And I think writing it down does make a difference. It really does. The energy and the expression of writing it down. Typing is not the same, though it's better than nothing. But actually the physical act of writing really does make a difference. So the challenge is for the next week, morning or evening, or maybe both. See if you can identify at least 3 things. 3 things. There are 3 things every day in your life that you can be grateful for. If you're going through something that is incredibly challenging, whatever that might mean, it is so important to still honor that. But maybe there's still something within that you can be grateful for. Or maybe that isn't something that you focus on at all. Maybe you look for 3 things that are not at all related to that, things that you've been able to experience in your life. Somebody that you've had in your life that has made a difference. But 3 things every day. It can be past. It doesn't have to be something that happened that day. It can be something that you're grateful for from your past that you got to experience, or somebody that you got to have in your life. It could be something really big. It can be the small everyday things that we've talked about, or that I've talked about. Whatever it is, and it can be the same things over and over again. When I started my gratitude journal, literally there were days that it was the same things, the same exact things over and over again. Dependable car was one of them. Health was the other one. Like I said, if I felt better the next day than I did the previous day, that was something I felt grateful for. My husband traveled for work every week, and so if he got to where he was going safely, that was something that every time that he would get there and come back home safely, I was grateful for that. Those were the things, those were the big things that I wrote day after day after day. And the truth is, when I was first writing them, I didn't really feel much. Like in my head, of course I was grateful. And I mean, that was something I believed that I was truly grateful for. But the reality is I didn't feel in here much. I wasn't able to really connect with how that felt in my body. But the more that I did it, the more that I was able to kind of think about or recognize how bad I might have felt the day before, like not being able to get out of bed, and then feeling well enough that I could actually get out of bed and function okay, even though I did still have a headache. Like being able to feel that, I was able to begin to feel in my body that sense of appreciation and how much that meant to me that my husband got there safely, or that my children were healthy, because what would I do if they weren't? How would it feel if they weren't? How would it feel if he didn't arrive safely? And when I really thought about that, that's what gave me that sense of feeling, that sense of appreciation in my body. But it's a practice. It really is a practice. Sometimes it takes day after day for us to be able to truly feel what that feels like in our body. Yes, Laura. Yeah, and that is a challenge, and that can be hard when you have a diagnosis that clearly does create limitations for you in whatever way that is. It can be a challenge to honor both things, but it is possible, and it is important to be able to honor both of those things, because whatever that limitation is, whatever pain or whatever it might cause, we need to honor that, and then also find things to be grateful for, either in that, or there might be days when you're really struggling with that, and that isn't something at all that you find any gratitude in. Maybe the things you find gratitude in are totally separate from physical ability at all. Hi, Jessie. Hi, Verlando. So, again, I think that there are some comments that I might have missed, but I'm not able to see them. It like all fades out and I can't see anything up there. So if I have not addressed something that you've shared, please feel free to share it again. So the last thing I'm seeing, the first thing I'm seeing is that Jamie Young joined and Jamie's comment. The last thing I'm seeing is Isabel Nagel. So if you did share something and I'm not seeing it, please feel free to share it again. And if you are watching this on replay, have any thoughts, comments, anything, please feel free to share and make sure that you tag me. And I really, since I'm here with you, want to really connect to my sense of appreciation and gratitude for the space that you have helped me create here with Courageous Journeys. Courageous Journeys started 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago. Wow. As a little private practice in Illinois. And I believe I started this page on Facebook in 2010. And I haven't done anything really to try to make it grow, but it has grown over the years. And it has allowed me to connect with so many amazing people, whether that's just in this context on the page, whether it's somehow working together. You have inspired me. You have given me something to feel grateful for on so many occasions. Our connection and the ability that I get to have now to do the work that I do in the way that I do it. You being here and being a part of this family, this Courageous Journeys family, has given me the ability to do my work online with people from all over the world. before creating this community, and you've helped create it, before creating this community, I did my work only in person. And I loved it, and it was beautiful. And I would be very happy doing that still. But that is not what I was able to do at the time. And so now being able to do it in this way has been literally life-changing. In that I don't have to have an office. I can travel. I can do it from anywhere. And many of you have taken the journey with me and taking it everywhere. And so I have so much gratitude for all of you, for being here with me, and for the vulnerability and the courage that you show when you show up here, when you share with me in whatever way that looks like. So thank you for joining me. I don't see any other comments. So I will go on with the rest of my Monday. And I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day. Wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, take a moment and connect with my appreciation for you and whatever you have to feel grateful for in this moment. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.